Today, we visit Victorian England, a period so commonly associated with the occult and the supernatural. Nestled in London's affluent Mayfair is a house of horrors that has fascinated Britain for decades. 50 Berkeley Square.
Number 50 has developed quite the reputation for its spooky goings-on.
This may just look like any other expensive townhouse in the center of London. In reality, this property is steeped in paranormal history. Join us as we discuss death, insanity, and supernatural mystery, all within one unassuming house. As a narrow townhouse, 50 Berkeley Square has noticeable characteristics. Among a row of similar tall, compacted houses, it is terrifying to learn of the sinister events that took place inside. The four-floor building includes an attic, which is the central location of many of the haunting stories that come out of this seemingly ordinary home. So now that we know the setting, let us investigate the strange happenings and inhabitants of 50 Berkeley Square, starting with the very first tale of horror. This is the original haunting of Berkeley Square. The stories of tragedy and haunting associated with the house began in 1789. The first tale that we're aware of centers around a young woman named Adeline, who is believed to be terrorized by her uncle. Adeline's body was found on the pavement outside Berkeley Square in mysterious circumstances. It was considered that Adeline either jumped or was pushed by her uncle. The speculation that she was the victim of her uncle was fueled by several sightings of spirits in the house after Adeline's passing. Police were called shortly after her death, when there were reports of a disappearing presence at the street-facing window of Berkeley Square. A female figure would be seen looking out of the window from which Adeline fell, only to vanish into thin air. As the strange events continued in this property over the years, Adeline's presence may very well have remained. Future residents have reported seeing the specter of a young girl walking the halls. However, this may be down to another tragedy that occurred in the house, as it has been suggested that a child was murdered by her nanny whilst living there. Not a lot of details of this event are known, but the story has endured regardless. Even before its now sinister reputation, 50 Berkeley Square had an interesting story. The four-story townhouse was at one point briefly home to future British Prime Minister George Canning. During his stay at the property, Canning made notes of haunting experiences, including unexplained banging noises and sounds of movement in the house. It was later in the 1850s that events unfolded that would deepen the legacy of the building and turn it into the supernatural attraction that it remains today. A jilted lover, the inspiration for one of Charles Dickens' most famous characters. Insanity and a tragic end. The story of Thomas Myers has so many layers of horror and a legacy that has created one of the most famous haunted buildings in London. Some of you may be wondering who the character in question may be. Well, speculation abounds that the character of Miss Havisham from Great Expectation is based on the life of Thomas Myers. For those unfamiliar, in Great Expectations, Miss Havisham is a woman abandoned before her wedding. She lives out the rest of her life in an empty house, trying to preserve her youth and innocence while going progressively insane. This character is even more haunting on screen than she is in the books.
You're not afraid of a woman who has never seen the sun since you were born.
While Dickens never explicitly admitted there was a direct link, Myers stayed at Berkeley Square during the time that Great Expectations was written. Many details of Myers' life bear an uncanny resemblance to Miss Havisham. Myers, too, was left by his fiancée and responded by isolating himself in a large house. Heartbroken by the loss of his love, Myers could not move on with his life and lived alone in the house for more than 10 years as his mind unraveled. Unsurprisingly, due to the nature of his isolation, details of Myers' final years are not confirmed. What is known is that during his time as the occupier of the house, Myers' madness worsened, as did the condition of the building. Upkeep was ignored, and the crumbling property stood out among the surrounding high-end London houses. This led to speculation about who or what was inside. Locals noted that Myers would only be seen when he opened the door to his staff that looked after him. He was known to sleep during the day and wander the house at nighttime by candlelight. Myers was even known by the nickname The Ghost around the Mayfair area of London, which made the home even more infamous. Perhaps the most disturbing rumor surrounding Myers was the suggestion that he was engaging in occult activities in the basement. As the story goes, Myers was using dark arts in an attempt to regain the love of his former fiancée. Myers continued to live out his life in the house, unable to overcome the heartbreak. His true haunting legacy, however, is what happened to future residents of number 50 Berkeley Square. Several of the testimonies from those who experienced hauntings at Berkeley Square come from guests who stayed in the house at the same time as Myers. Although considering his reclusive nature, it is unsure if their paths would have ever crossed. With the spirit of Adeline and the peculiar behavior of Thomas Myers, among other legends, it is no surprise that any tragedy that occurred within the house has been tied to the supernatural. However, such events have occurred at an unexplainable rate. One guest, Robert Warboys, reportedly responded to seeing a terrifying presence in the house by frantically ringing a bell for assistance. Reports vary on whether Warboys fired a gunshot into the walls of the property. It is widely believed that Warboys was carrying a gun, but more on that later. Warboys would die from shock shortly after his experience in Berkeley Square. While the exact details of Warboys' death are not confirmed, many tellings of the story suggest that he actually died in the building that very night. Others suggest that it was shortly after. However, it is considered that the horrors Warboys saw that fateful night played a part in his ultimate fate. Author Jessie Adelaide Middleton writes in Gray's Ghost Book, "A gentleman, a disbeliever in ghosts, dared to sleep in number 50 and was found a corpse in the middle of the floor after frantically ringing for help in vain." One of the most famous haunting experiences happened to politician Lord George Littleton. As the rumors of Myers' peculiar existence grew, it became the subject of a dare involving Lord Littleton and some drinking buddies. It is not known for certain if Littleton arranged to stay in the building whilst Myers was also there, but it is known that Littleton was staying in the attic at the time. It is clear that enough was thought of the terrifying nature of 50 Berkeley Square to bring a shotgun with him during his overnight adventure. Littleton saw a figure in the darkness lunging at him in the middle of the night and reached for his gun. Littleton swore that the figure dropped to the floor like a rocket after shooting it. However, the next morning, only buckshot in the floorboards remained. Littleton would take his own life 4 years after his stay in Berkeley Square. So far, we have told you the stories of human residents and guests of this mysterious dwelling. However, these pale in comparison to the entity known simply as the Nameless Thing of Berkeley Square. You may have noticed similarities between the stories of Robert Warboys and George Littleton. Both men are believed to have stayed on the second floor of the house, the same floor that Adeline fell from nearly a century before. Both men were skeptical of the rumors surrounding Berkeley Square's haunting reputation. Both men were terrified, distressed, and seemingly fired gunshots into the building. And, perhaps most importantly, both men were found dead under suspicious circumstances. What if these circumstances were not simply natural or even a response to seeing spirits? What if there was a creature living within the walls of 50 Berkeley Square? There have been some details that we have saved until now that may shed light on these strange suggestions. Firstly, when Warboys arrived to stay at Berkeley Square sometime in the early 1840s, the landlord insisted that he stay in a room on the second floor that had a bed connected to the alarm bell and insisted that he carry a pistol with him into bed. Why would this be needed if there was not indeed a physical presence that could hurt the guest? Clearly, the landlord knew that anyone there would need to be able to defend themselves. As for Littleton, he did recount his experience and described what came at him from the darkness, saying that it was a deformed, tentacled sea creature. Following the gunshot by Littleton, it was noted that some unknown residue remained on the floor. Despite his fear, Littleton remained to look for the creature, but it was never found. At this point, Littleton's description of the creature is the only one, but that would change in 1887 when two sailors dared to stay at this infamous London townhouse. With the house having gone through various owners since Thomas Myers, two sailors from the HMS Penelope stumbled upon a "To Let" sign attached to 50 Berkeley Square. The house, however, was empty, and the man elected to let themselves in. And again, they went to sleep in the second-floor bedroom. During the night, the two men heard footsteps throughout the house. The noise came closer to the room before something entered and attacked the men. One man survived, and one did not. The second man was discovered impaled on the rails of a staircase in the basement of the house. This was the very same basement where Thomas Myers reportedly practiced occult rituals. The other sailor lived to describe the creature as a dark, shapeless, slithering mass. Was this the same creature that attacked Warboys and Littleton? Was this creature brought forth by Thomas Myers' occult practices? Is it still there? The tale of number 50 Berkeley Square certainly raises a lot of questions. Thankfully, no supernatural events have been reported in the house for some time, so maybe it is finally at rest. That was our story for today. If you know of any other haunted properties or stories of supernatural creatures, then comment below and they may be featured in future videos. Leave a like, subscribe, and we will see you soon.